Elizabeth, would you care for something to eat?
Oh, I wouldn't mind a little snack.
Well, son, go in the kitchen and fix your Aunt Esther a fish head sandwich.
I've been looking forward for this movie for months.
What's it about?
Well, it's about strange, terrifying creatures from outer space who visit the planet Earth.
Is your mother in this? Tell me you're gonna sit there and defy the man that made love to you last night.
Rolling over on me accidentally in your sleep ain't my idea of making love.
Nobody could roll over you accidentally. Four-wheel drive.
Hey guys, when we talk about great comedians, we have to talk about the legendary Red Fox. He was an amazing comedian, a king of comedy. He was a great stand-up comedian and actor. He was awesome on Sanford and Sons, The Red Fox Show, and I loved him on The Royal Family with Della Reese and Lawrence Tate. He became real popular from his raunchy nightclub shows before and during the civil rights movement. He was known as the king of the party records. He performed on more than 50 records in his lifetime that sold millions. He had an amazing gift of making people laugh. I don't find a lot of people funny, but that man made me laugh. His facial expressions was everything. I wanted to talk about him earlier, but every time I try to do it, I got so emotional. His story is just so touching, but I'm doing it now. And he won a Golden Globe Award and received an additional 3 nominations. He was also nominated 3 times for the Primetime Emmy Award. He was also given a star on the St. Louis Walk of Fame. John Elroy Stanford was born on December 9th, 1922 in St. Louis, Missouri, and he was raised on Chicago's South Side. His father was Fred Sanford. He served during World War I and worked as an electrician and an auto mechanic. His mother was Mary Hughes Sanford. His father, Fred, left the family sometime after 1930, and he was raised by his mother, his grandmother, and his minister. He had a brother whose name was also Fred G. Sanford Jr. That's where the name Fred G. Sanford came from on the show Sanford and Sons. He modeled it after his older brother who had died in 1965, 7 years before the show premiered. Sometime later, after his father left, his mother allegedly started dating a man who worked as a bodyguard for the gangster Al Capone. She moved to Chicago and left Red Fox and his brother to live with their grandmother. They were poor, and his brother kept getting into trouble. He would be in and out of jail, but Red looked up to his brother. When Red was growing up, he would get picked on for his red hair and his complexion. He stood up to them and joked right back on those kids, so he became the class comedian. LaWanda Page was also his classmate, the one who played Aunt Esther in Sanford and Son, so he knew her from way back. When Red was in the 5th grade, he got thrown out of school because he threw a book at a teacher. His grandmother was older, and it was getting hard for her to take care of him, so she sent him to live with his mother in Chicago. He dropped out of school again in Chicago when he was in the 8th grade. He would hang out on the corner with his friends, joining the 58th Street gang. While hanging out with his friends, they would play the dozens, just joking around with each other. And it is said that Red Fox was very good at it. At 14, him and his friends formed a group called the Bonbons. They played on the corners to earn money. Red was one of the singers and a washtub bass player for the Bonbons. They weren't making enough money, so he and his band, they wanted to go to New York to earn a better living. They train hopped on a train that was carrying onions, and they ate onions for 3 days. They were supposed to get off when the train got to New Jersey, but the railroad security caught his friends, but Red managed to escape. He went on the ferry and went to New York. Red ended up in Harlem, New York. A month later, his friends who got caught train hopping got out of jail and joined him in Harlem. They got their band together to try to make money, but in 1942, Red and his group was drafted for World War II after the Pearl Harbor attack. To avoid the military, Red Fox said he ate a bar of soap, which made his heart beat fast. So the doctors told him he was not fit enough to go to war. Now without a band, Red was homeless and needed another way to make money. He was sleeping on top of roofs and used newspaper as blankets. He did end up getting a job as a comedian and dancer at a club, but the money was not enough for him to get a home of his own. The customers liked his red hair and complexion, and they would call him Fox or Foxy because of how he dressed. He then started calling himself Red Fox. He was having a hard time financially, and he started doing things so he could eat, like leaving restaurants and not paying and stealing food. He ended up going in and out of jail. In the 1940s, Red got a job as a dishwasher where he met Malcolm Little, aka Malcolm X. At that time, Malcolm X was a fellow dishwasher at Jimmy's Chicken Shack in Harlem, as they became friends like brothers. They were together a lot, and some people thought they were brothers. They both had red hair. Red Fox was called Chicago Red after his hometown, and Malcolm X was known as Detroit Red. They both were allegedly committing crimes like stealing, selling weed, and so on. In Malcolm X's autobiography, Red Fox was referred to as the funniest dishwasher on this earth. I believe that. Red wanted to be in show business and would go on to become a recording artist for the record label Savoy Records. He recorded 5 songs for Savoy label under the direction of Teddy Ray, including the songs Red Fox Blues and Fine Jelly Blues. Red Fox met his first wife, Evelyn Kilbrew. When a guy wanted to buy some liquor from Red, he came over to the area with Evelyn, and that guy was planning to SA Evelyn, and Red Fox protected her. Red and Evelyn allegedly got married 5 days later in 1948. Red met comedian Slappy White. They formed a duo called Fox and White. Slappy was married to singer and actress Pearl Bailey before she was famous. He allegedly left his wife to pursue his dreams. Red Fox and his wife also separated. They got a divorce in 1951. Red was married 4 times. In 1956, he married Betty Jean Harris, a showgirl and dancer, and was a colleague of LaWanda Page. They were married for 18 years. He married his third wife, Joy, in 1976, and they divorced in 1979. And his final marriage was to Kahu in July 1991. So Red and Slappy worked together on the Chitlin circuit of stand-up comedy during the 50s and 60s. They became a hit with black and white audiences. Allegedly, the Caucasian crowd wanted them to wear blackface and white lips, and Red refused to do that. He came on stage just looking regular. Red became successful from his raunchy nightclub acts. After performing on the East Coast, he got his big break after singer Dinah Washington insisted that they came to Los Angeles. She wanted Red and Slappy to go on tour with her in California to be the opening act, and she would pay them $1,000, allegedly. They were broke at the time, and they went to California. They thought that the racism would not be so bad there, but it was allegedly worse than when they worked on the Chitlin circuit. Later on, Red and Slappy allegedly had issues over some money Slappy owed him. Some people say they had issues over a girl. We don't know what the reason is, but they parted ways. Williams of Dot One Records saw Red's act at the Brass Reel nightclub. Red Fox was the most successful comedian on that label. He sold thousands of records on college campuses before most people even knew who he was. In 1956, he recorded the first of more than 50 party records, comedy albums specializing in raunchy humor. Red was signed to a long-term contract with Dotsy Williams, and he released a series of comedy albums on a half-dozen record labels that swiftly became cult favorites. Red got the title King of the Party Records. A lot of comedians was inspired by Red. Red recorded numerous albums that sold worldwide, but he didn't get the money that he deserved. Red Fox and Williams had a falling out around 1963. He tried to sue Dootsy, but he lost after the judge awarded Dootsy the rights to the albums. Red was legally tied to the Doodle label until Frank Sinatra bought his contract for Sinatra's Loma label in 1967. Frank saw Red's performance and wanted to sign him to his label, but Red told him that he couldn't sign with him because he was in a contract with Dootsy Williams. Allegedly, Frank told Red he'll take care of it, and days later, Red was out of that contract. Red said he doesn't know how he did it, but he didn't ask any questions. Some things are best left alone. It has been alleged for years that Frank Sinatra had ties to the mob. He interacted with several well known mafia figures, but Frank denied having ties to the mafia. Red sold millions of comedy albums. Frank Sinatra got Red a lot of shows in Las Vegas. Red became more and more popular. He would perform in front of large, wide crowds. He was one of the first comedians to play to Caucasian audiences on the Las Vegas Strip. Red had crossed over. Red opened up his own club in California and he named it the Red Fox Club. People called it Red's Place. That's where a number of famous comedians got their start, like Richard Pryor, Bill Cosby, and Flip Wilson. It is said that a number of famous musicians used to be there too. Red and Bill Cosby ended up being partners at the club, but allegedly they would end up having disagreements when Bill Cosby raised the door admission and changed pictures on the wall and stuff like that. They eventually stopped doing business together. Down the line, the club would burn down after someone allegedly left a cigarette that caught the couch on fire. Red was getting so popular, they wanted him on TV. In 1960, Red got a small role on the movie All the Fine Young Cannibals with Natalie Wood and Robert Wagner. He was the piano player at Rose's. In 1970, he got a role in the film Cotton Comes to Harlem. Red Fox went on to be a mainstream success with the 1970s TV comedy series Sanford and Son, playing Fred G. Sanford. Demond Wilson played the role of his son, Lamont. Fred and Lamont were owners of a junk salvage store in Watts, California. His friend LaWanda Page played his sister-in-law, Esther Anderson. Red told her about the show and asked her to audition. They did not want to hire LaWanda because she didn't have any experience in acting, but Red insisted they hired her. She said while she was working on the show, the producers told Red they have to replace her, and Red said no. He told them he knows what she can do. Red helped her with her lines. He rehearsed with her all day. He got other friends like Pat Morita on there too. Mr. Miyagi from The Karate Kid, remember that show? He knew Pat from way back, and Grady and Bubba from the Chitlin Circuit days. Red was a good friend. He looked out for his friends. Della Reese talked about how much of a good person Red was and how much he was always giving. They were friends for over 40 years. She said when she didn't have a job, she went to see him. He was working in some city in Pennsylvania. She told him she was looking for a job. She said he called the man who he was working for and he said, "My back is out. I can hardly straighten up." But nothing was wrong with his back. He said, I don't think I'm going to be able to go on, but Dee is here and she's good so she can do the show for me. I'll be right back tomorrow. I'll be all right tomorrow night, but I can't make it. The man said, "Well, they're expecting you." And Red kept saying, "My back is out." She said Red was standing there like he couldn't straighten up, but nothing was wrong with him. Boy. She said Red went on to the stage walking like something was wrong with him. And he told them, "My back is out, but Della Reese is here and I'm going to go to the doctor, so I'll be all right tomorrow. Give her a warm welcome. She's good. You're going to like her." She said Red left her there to work and the man hired her. Red was a good guy. So Sanford and Son aired on NBC on January 14th, 1972. The show became a major success. The Brady Bunch was on air, but when Sanford and Son came on, the Brady Bunch was struggling to keep their viewership. People were tuning in to Sanford and Son, and it drove the Brady Bunch off the air. Red was having issues with NBC. The show was doing so well, and he wasn't getting paid enough. And allegedly, Red found out that there were people who worked on the show making more money than him. He felt undervalued, and he knew he deserved more pay. The show took so much of his time, and he complained of health issues. Red walked off the set during season 3. The show was doing so well, and clearly Red was the main reason for that. He allegedly knew they were trying to sell the show to Columbia for millions. He asked for a 25% ownership stake in the series. Red knew he deserved more than they were giving him. Tendon Productions filed a lawsuit against him for $10 million because Red was in a contract. They settled the dispute in June of 1974, and Red Fox started receiving $25,000 per episode. Red had enough, and he quit the show after season 6 ended. He accepted an offer from ABC to host a variety show called the Red Fox Comedy Hour. Allegedly, he was supposed to make $100,000 per week. The show initially gained high ratings, but it was canceled at the end of its first season. But he was supposed to make $100,000 per week. That was good money. NBC, faced with the prospect of losing one of their biggest hits, Sanford and Son, they decided to keep going without either of the leads because Damon, he left the show too. They came up with Sanford Arms, and that premiered on September 16th, 1977. Most of the supporting cast remained, but the show flopped without Red Fox being there. The show was canceled after 4 episodes. Red started having financial issues, and in 1983, he filed for bankruptcy. He went back to Las Vegas and did more shows. In 1989, he did the movie Harlem Nights with Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor. He made over $500,000 for that movie. It is said that Red would file his taxes, but he never sent the money in to pay the taxes. The IRS put a tax lien on him, allegedly for almost $1 million, and they took everything. They allegedly took even the jewelry he had on at the time and the money in his pocket. Child, they even had it live on TV while they were taking his stuff. This was so sad for Red. They took his house too. They took his house, but told him he could stay there until they sold it. That's just so heartbreaking. Red made a comeback with the series The Royal Family that Eddie Murphy wrote for him. Lawrence Tate and Naya Rivera was in that show too. I love that show, y'all. That show was a hit. It debuted at number 1. But the show would be short-lived because on October 11th, 1991, Red Fox suffered a heart attack right there on the set of The Royal Family. Della Reese, she said that Red had issues with one of the producers on the show who was telling him how to be funny. Della, who was there the day he died, said that Red was doing an interview with the show Entertainment Tonight on the set. She said they were just rehearsing a scene and all Red had to do was just walk at the back of the chair. She said they were not shooting, they were just rehearsing. She said they sent someone to walk back and the man said, "Where is Red?" As she told him that Red was having an interview with Entertainment Tonight. She told him Red didn't have any lines. He didn't have any lines here. He just had to walk past. Then the man said, if he's supposed to walk past, then he should be here to walk past. So he goes in there, stops their shooting, and brings Red out. When Red got out there and found out all he had to do is walk across the back of her chair, which anybody could have done, he was livid. He was upset and he fell on the floor. She thought it was a prank because he was always doing prank falls. Everybody thought it was a prank. She leaned down to him and she puts her hands on him and he said, "Get my wife, get my wife." She said, "Somebody get the paramedics and somebody go get Mrs. Fox." And they went and got her and they pronounced him dead. They put him in the ambulance. She said they all got in the car. They all got in their cars and followed him to the hospital. and he came back to life and he stayed for 4.5 hours. They were in the lobby of the hospital, and the doctor came out and let his wife know Red was gone. She said two of the producers were standing there and they said, "Well, what are we going to do with the script? The script was written for Red and Della. Who are we going to get?" With his wife right there, who just found out her husband was gone. My goodness. Della said she went crazy after that, and she got in her car and left. She said while she was in the car, she made up her mind that she was never going to do television that way again. Because if something happened to her and they treated her husband and her daughter like that, she would have to come back. She said they never treated him with the respect that he should have, that they should have given him. She said he should have had a right out of the show, but they didn't do that. Instead, they just stuck Jack Kay in there. He never got the treatment he should have gotten. He was not phased out of the show. Maybe like write his character out with an accident or him being sick or something. She said one day he was there and one day he wasn't. Wow, how heartless. Red was broke when he died. Della said the reason he was broke is because he was always giving. He was always putting his hand in his pocket to help people. She said if you came to him, he could see your need. He would run his hand in his pocket if he saw your need. Pat Morita said he and his pregnant wife needed $3,500 to not lose his house. He came to Red to borrow the money. Red called his secretary to bring his checkbook, and he wrote Pat the check so he wouldn't lose his house. Pat told him he would work it off and pay him back whichever way he could. Before Red signed his name, he said, "I don't want to hear anything about any payback and any IOU. You want to pay me back? I know you're going to make it one day, son. You do this for somebody." That's what Red told him. Red just wanted him to help other people when he made it. Red's friends, Eddie Murphy. Red's friend, Eddie Murphy, paid for his funeral. He is buried at Palm Memorial Park in Las Vegas, Nevada. Red Foxx is remembered for his tell it like it is style of comedy, and he was a big influence to comedians like Richard Pryor and Chris Rock. He had an amazing ability to make people laugh. Most of all, he was a kind, giving, caring man who deserved way more than he received. This legend is not forgotten. Rest in peace, Mr. Red Fox.